Alright, what is poppin', people? We are back, and we got some council ban votes for the month of December. We got about a week until the last tier shift of the year. Well, I guess the first tier shift next year. But I believe this will be the last, ban vote we do. And I'm a little bit torn on how I feel about some of the results here. But we'll still talk about them anyway. So, we'll cover the ones that I first agree with the most. And then we'll cover the ones that I disagree with, but I'll still, say why they were banned, obviously. And then I'll even go over why the other things were nominated. Anyhow, let's get into it. So, the first vote, and I don't think anyone's shocked by it being banned, is Drizzle. Nearly unanimously banned. Drizzle was just ridiculous for the tier. I have talked about this so many times at this point, so I don't have a whole lot new to say. But essentially, the TLDR is this. Drizzle enabled Pokemon like Tornadus to just not miss Hurricane. It enabled Swift Swimmers like Omastar, Kabutops, Kingdra to become pretty much non-revenge killable. And the amount of defensive Pokemon that could reliably withstand the onslaught of rain was very minimal. Even if you tried to build out a defensive core that had means to, generally cover the rain threats. So something like, say, Diancie, Mantine, and then something to check Kabutops. Rain teams still had enough outs versus that kind of counterplay. Because, essentially, all you really had to do was predict. And if you can prevent the spam of, Kingdra Surf, Tornadus Hurricane, that's great. The problem is these mons are so strong that one misprediction is going to cost you probably the game. It's not a case of, oh, I've got some leeway here. Not really, no. You don't really have... There wasn't really much agency given to the player playing against Rain. And so we felt Drizzle just enabling this much just dominance for one playstyle was a bit much. And then we got Galabro. Now, I think the set that most people would assume got Slowbro-G banned would be the Quick Draw set with Quick Claw. Essentially, it's legitimately just uncompetitive. And I know that term is just kind of thrown around. And at this point, I'm not even sure what it's supposed to mean. But what I define uncompetitive by is it's just adding unhealthy, just not... Okay, let's rephrase it. It adds elements to a game that are not conducive to, just two people, best player wins. That kind of game, if that makes any sense. So, essentially, Quick Draw plus Quick Claw gave Slowbro-G an over a 40% chance to move first, despite its horrible speed. That's just bullshit luck, essentially, to put it in its most blatant form. Or the most obvious words. God, I'm so sorry. It's not even that early, and I'm still unable to speak. But it adds that element of just, oh, it doesn't matter if you're playing well. I can just win because I got lucky. And yeah, there's luck like that built into the game already, right? Scald can burn. Sludge Bomb can poison. Focus Blast misses 70% of the time. And yet, that's more of element of the game that you accept when you either choose to use the move, if you're talking about Focus Blast, or it's just there are still other ways to play against it, right? So something like Scald, you could avoid the burn being a problem by having water immune Pokemon, or natural cure Pokemon, or a Cleric on your team, or Pokemon that don't mind switching into Scald, just period. Same with Sludge Bomb. You can't do that against Galabro. It doesn't matter. It's why we have things like Evasion Claws in place, because you can't do anything about the fact you might just miss because they got double team stacked. What, you want me to run Aerial Ace on all my Pokemon now? Yeah, that's a real great move. Nice 60 base power. But I would even say that this set is why we banned Galabro. It's why I wanted to ban it and just get rid of it entirely. Or it's why I wanted to ban Quick Draw, but when that wasn't, deemed a reasonable thing for us to do by, I won't out them, but by this person, I was like, alright, guess we gotta ban it. But there are other factors too. I think Calm Mind Gallerbro, if you paid attention to UU in the DLC 1 metagame, you're very aware of how devastating of a sweeper just Calm Mind Slowbro-G with a resist berry, like Shuka or Colbur generally, or even Black Sludge was. In the form of resist berries, Colbur Berry made it so like things like Pangoro and I guess Zoroark I'll throw in there, even like a Mian Chao would knockoff, those are not going to be revenge killing you anytime soon. Shuka Berry was helpful for when we had like Rhyperior around, but even now it's decent if you're running into say like, I don't know, a Golurk that doesn't want to Polter you because they're scared of, I don't know, you switching to a normal immune, or not a normal immune, a ghost immune. That'd be my best guess for why they went to click the Poltergeist button. But other ground types, we have some that they're not coming to mind right now. Gastrodon, I don't know, that's not revenge killing. Regardless, you get the idea. Resist berries furthered the problem of trying to revenge kill Gallerbro, because it's so bulky, especially when it gets those Calm Mind boosts up. Wow, that music was so loud. Give me a second to pause this, and I need to turn that down. Alright, I am so sorry for that introduction. That just intro to the music blasted my ears. Anyhow. The idea of resist berries on Gallerbro just make it so hard to revenge kill because you want to hit it with a super effective move and you just can't. Or you can, but you're not going to KO it anymore. And you can see this post up here talking about like all these Pokemon that can punish it. Can it? Can CB punish Colbur Berry Gallerbro as it sets up with Calm Mind? You don't beat it anymore. Flygon, I don't even think Flygon revenge kills Gallerbro unless it's Choice Banded. And I need to do the calcs because Flygon is a very weak Pokemon. I mean, Toxtricity, sure, but you don't Oko it once it's boosted. And then it gets to Scout you out. Same with Starmie. You have all these Pokemon that, yeah, they can pressure it. And I think a lot of these also apply to, like, AV Gallerbro. Like, these Mons all 2-hit KO it, or Oko it. But Calm Mind Gallerbro just doesn't care. It's a Pokemon that just wins one-on-one versus pretty much everything in the tier. Or I say wins one-on-one. There are some bad implications to that statement if I just throw it out like that. But the idea is Gallerbro has a favorable matchup if it's a Calm Mind set against so many Pokemon, and it's such an issue to try to actually remove from the game once it's boosted. And then even if you want to throw an Assault Vest, I mean, it kind of just scouts out. I think Assault Vest was the most healthy of all the sets. It scouts out a lot of the potent breakers like Choice Specs Goodra and Toxtricity, for instance. And I think Future Sight's just a fun move. I won't talk too much about AV Gallerbro because I don't think it was a problem. I think the other two sets, though, were very much problems. Now we can talk about the other two bans. Now, Tornadus, it was banned essentially because you have a large variety in sets. And by large variety, I mean Specs and Nasty Plot. Those are the only two sets I think people would look at and go, oh, that's too much. And because Tornadus is so fast and strong, and it has such good coverage, and it can boost a Nasty Plot, you end up having a really dynamic offensive Pokemon with a lot of room for trying to figure out just what it wants to have to rely on teammates to, you know, break or remove for it. You got coverage into forms like Heat Wave, Focus Blast, Grass Knot, Sludge Wave. There's probably even some other moves. You even have like utility with Knockoff and U-Turn on something like Specs if you want to either cripple some of your own soft checks or just, you know, again, bring in a teammate to deal with it. Now, I voted do not ban on Tornadus. If I were to say to ban it for any set, it would have been Rain based. But we banned Drizzle, so unless people were thinking Manual Rain would still be broken, which I hadn't seen any, I hadn't used any, so I can't comment on that. Then in that case, like, sure. But no one was running Manual Rain, and I don't like trying to just speculate into a theoretical metagame. I don't think that's helpful when trying to determine how to tier. And if we're looking at Tornadus outside of Rain, well, 70% accurate Hurricane as your stab move kind of sucks. I mean, It's obviously not something that's going to just make you a horrible Pokemon. We see Tornadus T and OU, for instance, is, I'm assuming, like a top 10 or 15 Pokemon. It has other things going for it, but it does just fine with its 70% Hurricanes. But there have been so many games that I have used Tornadus Incarnate, and I just don't get Hurricanes hitting. And you could argue, okay, maybe my sample size is low, and I've just had bad luck. Sure. But I still think that it does encapsulate pretty reasonably why having to rely on Hurricane outside of rain is just shit. And when that's your main form of damage, it really limits Tornadus' ability to wall break safely and successfully. If you can't... So, say you're in a Nasty Plot set, I would say the coverage on that was generally... We'll look at it outside of rain. Hurricane, Heatwave, Grass Knot. You gotta hit Hurricanes versus Mantine. You gotta hit Hurricanes versus Sylveon. I do not want to risk missing these versus these Pokemon. Mantine can, haze me, and then maybe switch out to an electric type. Sylveon can at least switch in and then pray for a dodge. And I think probably beat you down with Hyper Voices or Moonblasts. It's just... You have less than a 50% chance to hit 2 in a row. And against the Pokemon that you just don't have coverage. There's also Diancie, obviously, and that always walls Torn outside of rain sets. I think Tornadus was very exploitable, just because that reliance on Hurricane to make the to get meaningful damage off a lot. And I do think maybe specs outside of rain deserved some experimentation, because even if your main stab move lacks the accuracy you'd like out of it, Tornadus still has all the coverage in the world. There are there are Pokemon that still check it pretty successfully. Again, Diancie, unless you were specs Weather Ball, Tornadus, and Rain, you were not breaking Diancie. Grass Knot's 20 base power against it, and I imagine spec Sludge Wave is not doing enough. You have options as well, like Gigalith at least switches into the Hurricanes. Needs to scout for Grass Knot, but still soft check. Porygon 2, I don't think specs outside of Rain was running Focus very often. I don't think specs was running Focus Blast in general very often because you wanted Heat Wave. Because that hit Bronzong and still hit the other Steel types. The point I'm getting at is there were, I think, defined answers to Tornadus. And I feel like we jumped the gun maybe on seeing Tornadus without Drizzle. But am I going to complain about banning another offensive threat? Not really. Anyway, now we get to Barbaracle. This is a ban that I personally don't understand. So I'm not going to have the most insightful comments on it. I mean, Shell Smash Barbaracle is a threat. Yes. But we have dealt with it before. So, I mean, my thing is that Barbaracle in SS Inu is not much different than Barbaracle in Oras Inu. I don't think Barb got any new moves between the generations outside of Liquidation instead of Razor Shell. And if you look at the ban reasoning, there's nothing alluding to that, so I don't think a better stab move is why we banned Barb. I will admit, Barbaracle's last move slot coverage is a bit of an issue, picking and choosing with Superpower and Grass Knot to try to choose what you let check you a little bit more is definitely a nice trait. And if you let Barb Shell Smash up, oh, it's going to punish you. I can't say anything about that. But I feel like dual screens and HO in general had been suffering as of late. I hadn't really seen a whole lot of it. And it didn't feel very, impactful when I did play into it, or watch others play into it. So if it's not for Barbaracle behind screens, then what is it for, Like, at the end of the day, I still understand if you want to ban Barbaracle because after a Shell Smash you just can't stop it. Sure, that's fine. But I really haven't been seeing Barbaracles get the Shell Smash up, so I don't know what are y'all doing to make that easier on yourselves. Is it dual screen still? People still run that? Perhaps. And now we can get to Pokemon that weren't banned, but still talk about why. And why I voted to not ban them. We'll talk about PZ first, because I voted to ban Porygon Z yet again. And it's the same reason as it has been every time. I think Porygon-Z just lacks sufficient defensive counterplay. I disagree. I think Fed chat a post down here somewhere. Yeah, I think Porygon-Z maybe have actual openings of games, the metagame's slowly balancing. Was it sold this time too slow and fragile? I disagree with the slow part. I definitely agree with it being too fragile. That is a big issue. But the reason I disagree with the slow issue is I personally feel the best sets were speed boosting sets. Be it Choice Scarf, be it Agility. I think those were the two best sets for Porygon-Z. They alleviated the speed issue, and you still hit like 12 freight trains going at speeds unreasonable. I liked Agility, Life Orb 3 attacks. I have been trying download on it just to see can I make Porygon-Z a sweeper and get the special attack boost. It's been pretty fun, and it has been really successful as well. Tri-Attack, if you don't resist Tri-Attack, you're taking 12 million. And in the Pokemon that do, outside of like Gigalith and Diancie, there aren't really any that want to try to switch into P2 or PZ, like its other coverage. You got Shadow Ball for Bronzong. Shadow Ball and Thunderbolt also do like 35 plus to Copperajah. And so just having minimal entry hazard support means it's probably switching into you once before it's 2-hit KO'd the next time it comes in. And even if you want to look at specs Porygon-Z, Adaptability Tri-Attack just blasts everything. It's just an unpleasant Pokemon to match into. I will say, choice sets for PZ are probably the ones that do hold it back a bit more, and it's why I'm so much of a fan of Life Orb with Agility. Life Orb with Agility lets you switch up moves, whereas choice spec sets and choice item sets in general, even Scarf to some degree, I do feel suffer from the fact that its moves are very pivotable into. They all have immunities. You know, Tri-Attack, you let in ghost types like Golurk, Delmise. Thunderbolt, you let in literally any ground type in the tier. And in Shadow Ball, do I really want to let a Beware in for free? Do I want to let in... I was going to say Dark type, but our Dark types are not taking Shadow Balls. I think, no, we have a couple. Pangoro. Do you want to let a Pangoro in for free? I think there's more room to punish choice item sets. But I feel like they also really do effectively punish you if you misplay. And I guess we could talk about Toxtricity too, because I think it's another mod similar. I voted do not ban on Toxtricity, mostly because I feel Toxtricity's speed is a much greater issue, and I'm just not sold on Shift Gear sets being any good. Not that they're not any good, I think they have a place. But they haven't felt that dangerous when I run into them. Toxtricity, if you ever want to attack before you get a Shift Gear off, you're burning your Throat Spray unless you're on Life Orb. And obviously if you're Throat Spray and you activate it too early, then later on in the game, you better hope that all your checks and counters are weakened because you're not sweeping shit. Spec sets are very dangerous, I will say that. And Electric Normal is surprisingly great coverage. There are a couple decent soft checks. I think Palisand's a good answer, unless you run into, like, Snarl, which I don't see very much of. Delmise is capable enough. You don't block Volt Switch, unfortunately, but it's there. Golurk is a great offensive answer. And then there are a couple blanket, specially defensive walls that can at least take a hit. You got, like, Diancie and Porygon-Z, for instance. Not Porygon-Z, Porygon-2, for instance. Even something like Gastrodon, you don't take Boom Burst, but you're a Volt blocker, and you resist Sludge Wave. So that's nice. And look at other Pokemon. Sigilif, I had been voting to ban it earlier, but as the metagame has developed more and more, I've not really seen it find a very solid spot in the tier. Now, Sigilif still does what it always has done, and that is switch into the really passive Pokemon and essentially punish you for having it out on the field. You switch into things like Milotic, switch into things like Gastrodon really well, and they can't do anything about it because Magic Guard means their Toxics don't matter. And Sigilif's very good at finding these chances to, you know, wall break or set up Calm Minds like this. But I feel like all of the common fast Pokemon being pretty decent at punishing Sigil. You got like knockoff, you know, for Mienshao. Heliolisk with Specs is blasting you. It definitely helps keep Sigil at least down a little bit. You know, I say all of the fast Pokemon, and I think about what actual fast Pokemon there are in the tier. And the number is not the highest. There's Zoroark as well. It's weird because Sigilif on paper I feel should be a lot better than its usage and success so far is indicated, but I just don't... I don't see people running it very much. And I feel like that needs a change. Use more Sigilif. Amon is good. I don't know how it ended up in PU. And we can go up to the two fighting up to the top. I think the reasoning for both of them being up here is fine. Beware essentially has no answers on paper. I just think that in practice it's a lot easier to handle. Fighting plus normal plus dark coverage is probably perfect coverage, or very close to it. Main issue for Beware for me, and why I didn't vote to ban it, is I do think that it's slow enough, even if you like invest fully in speed, you're only at 240. Slow enough to where a lot of the time you still can dissuade it from coming in too frequently. And at the very least, since its stabs have at least a little bit of overlap with ghost types, that's helpful. And it's also got some longevity issues just because of the loss of return. If you're Sword Stance, you're probably running Double Edge still, and that's recoil plus Life Orb recoil. And then, of course, CB has to rely on like Drain Punch for recovery. And I mean, hey, you could take Drain Punches a lot more effectively. So when it's forced to recover, it's a lot easier to switch into. And having to throw out Dark's Lariats with Beware is just not fun. That move is not very strong. And I feel like it leaves you very easily exploited by some of the common Pokemon in the meta, like Diancie, Sylveon, even like Silvally Fairy, for instance. And then we get to Mienshao as the last Mon that we did have on the slate. I'm not surprised that it was up here, because Regenerator, Choice Scarf, Mienshao is just so hard to like pin down and punish, and actually force chip on. You can't get Helmet Chip because it's got Regenerator, you can't really get Hazard's Chip. It got Close Combat this gen, so it's not having to worry about missing a high jump kick. But I do think that Mienchao's frailty is a big issue, because it really just ends up being relegated to hoping it forces out whatever it's out against. Or, you know, being brought in versus something that it's just going to pick off because it's low on health. Getting those, like, getting into those one-on-one situations is so risky with Mienshao, because it's got, what, like 70, 60, 60 bulk? I think it's about there. That doesn't give you much room for taking on a 1v1 with something like a Pangoro if it's, you know, random Choppleberry, or a Beware, which you just don't OHKO, by the way. Even something like Tornadus, you didn't want to risk trying to revenge kill necessarily. You know, you go for a knock or something versus that and it eats it up, you're probably dying. I just view Mienshao as a Pokemon that is very much a glass cannon, but because it's not the best at breaking through the Pokemon that do check it, you know, things like Palossand, Vileplume, for instance, I think it's fine enough to keep around. I just view it as, like, probably the best pivot in the tier, and definitely the best pivot in the tier, and probably the best Pokemon. When I was writing up the slate, where is it? We have the slate somewhere up here. Yeah, up here. Essentially, the comparison that you could make to Mienshao is Passimian from last gen. Wherein, because both Pokemon are so effective pivots, there's very little reason to not run it on your team when you need something fast, need something strong, need something that can, you know, spam U-turn, cripple the opposing to a knock. It's got a lot, and then you add Regenerator onto that, and you've got a Mon that just has so much staying power, so it's going to be allowed to do this throughout the whole game. And I think that's about it. Again, I'm a little bit shocked to see Barbaracle go. I didn't think people were viewing this as a problem, but hey. If it means less hyper offense to have to queue into, I'll take it. I don't mind having to run into less dual screens. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, I do have to say, thank you to all y'all that have subscribed within the last few days. I don't think we'll hit the original year-end goal of 250 subs. 25 subs in a week would be pretty impressive. I don't know if we can do that, but hey. Never say never. Thank you guys for watching. Obviously, I'll have a video on tier shifts when those happen. I don't know how many videos I'm gonna have for the last week of the month. Probably a couple lives. Maybe, probably at least one more of those spotlights. Until then, though, I hope you guys enjoy life, and I'll see you then. Peace.